Adesto cor ardento corto The difference between northern Italians and southern Italians is literally orangutans and chimpanzees. In some cases. uh, but mostly it's non-Christian Italians that think that they're great because they're from like Roman lineage, as opposed to Italians that know why they were great to begin with, ever. That's a big difference, actually. So it isn't really even topographical or racial or cultural. It's about recognition and choice. And a lot of that boils down to education, you know? Yeah. That was not my XYZ bingo card. Is the new cringe colloquialism for being surprised at the inevitable randomness of reality. Which is, yeah, like, duh. You're not going to have everything mapped out, bro. Prepare yourself for that. I don't like the new sandworm designs in From Dune. They're in direct conflict with Frank Herbert's vision. I haven't seen the movies. The new ones. But I'll run through them if they make it to God Emperor. They probably won't. So far, just the one that like ends prematurely that has Patrick Stewart in it, that is my jam. That is the one that I'm going to adhere to. And the books. Duh. You know, I can read the books whatever I want. Well, actually, it's kind of hard to find. I have some of them, but it's kind of hard to find them online. But yeah, you can read the books. I bet you could probably find them on the Internet Archive. One big way to allow the market to recover and prices to drop is to tell companies they won't be able to rely on stock buybacks and market manipulation to pad their bottom line. And they actually have to sell stuff to people at a competitive rate to make money. You can't have the government selling our stuff overseas either. You can't have it buying it up just for it to rot in the field. Neither. And that does suck for some farmers, but like, if you're a farmer and you're buying up Bill Gates seeds that are like chimeras that don't produce, well, it's not a chimera, they're like a mule seeds that don't produce a next generation that you have to buy every cycle, you're not doing anything, man. You're not doing anything. You're not participating in the farming tradition. You are part of a dirty factory. I'm sorry to say, you know, you're part of an extra dirty open air factory. And if you're spraying various chemicals like glyphosate on things like Roundup Ready soy and corn, you are effectively one of the worst people on the entire planet. You are participating in chemical genocide. So I don't really got, I hate to say it, like, love my farmers. I don't got sympathy for the ones that are not doing it right. And I have a feeling that most farmers are actually genuinely smart enough, believe it or not, genuinely smart enough. They can figure stuff out very easily. They're very active. They're very prone to solving issues. They can figure it out. They can make it work. However, I'm not sure if I can support Trump's El Salvador play. Some of the information coming out about this place, CCOT, is indicating that Bukele is not seemingly some anti-cartel hero. He is the cartels. He's just taking over the Red Room and drug-dealing businesses that we're openly trafficking innocent people to meet a grisly fate. Now, credit where credit is due. He did send back those women, but still, you know, so at least he's not operating like sex trafficking. That's pretty clear. I think that's why the Supreme Court has ruled against Trump on this particular issue. At least when it comes to an individual basis. Like, you got to bring back that United States citizen who isn't guilty of a crime, and they're just like, nope, no, no, no. Reason being is because they don't want anybody to actually say how bad the severe human rights abuses are there. And it's just like, well, you know, there's sending a message to gangs that are evil and destroy lives, and then there's being worse. Then there's letting, the enemy of good be perfection in a way. That's allowing your cure to be worse than the actual issue. That's a big problem. You can't have that happen. You can't have that happen. And since Bukele is like a Bitcoin billionaire, Bitcoin is the center support beam for the new decentralized black market, after the world has worked hard to exculpate it from their nations. And this is something that I've actually noticed throughout my entire, last decade of me paying attention to politics, is like slowly, one by one, countries are nationalizing. Back 30, 40 years ago, the CIA would roll up with paramilitaries and absolutely obliterate anybody that got in the way, kill the leader, install a puppet government, and rule from afar in that coup state. Now nationalisms are actually taking place, and you really actually kind of see this a little bit clipping in from Obama's last term, when he wanted to do a little bit of good to counteract all the horrible things to help him sleep at night, but mainly with Trump, because Trump does not have the same network plugins as a lot of the people that have created the current world order that's in the process of collapsing, as the new one struggles to be born and is doing things the wrong way, like Israel. Their new actions, for instance, trying to assert themselves, is actually backfiring really horrendously, and thank God, but that's just the nature of things. The Jewish people would never have been noble if it wasn't for their own Leviticus, from their own laws. So, like, if you start violating basic moral laws, and your own laws of gun, thou shalt not murder for no reason, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, then you're going to have some issues. Inducing porn into our society that to make people covetous of women, and that's just a way of destroying every single one of the Ten Commandments. And I really do not think that the Ten Commandments are that hard to adhere to. In fact, they're probably some of the easier religious laws written to adhere to. Anybody who tells you that, oh, God only told Abraham and God only set up the Ten Commandments because they'd be so hard, and if you try, then at least you're trying, you're going in the right direction. They're really not that hard. They're really commandments that you should adhere to, and is in the ancient world would be punishable by death if you didn't. Even though not in every case, like if you covet your neighbor's wife, it's not necessarily like you're setting yourself and them up for like a murder suicide /rape /abduction situation, but you could be. And down the road, we actually see in our modern world, yeah, you actually do set up networks for human trafficking, sex trafficking, when you pump the porn industry a bunch. It's true. All right, so I'm a very Jimmy Dore-pilled guy on this particular issue. I'll take it on a case-by-case basis, and I will speak on it if it's upsetting, because it is upsetting. If it was just gang members, straight to jail. But at the end of the day, we have to, if one person out of 100, is innocent, we gotta audit that entire 101 or 100. We gotta audit that entire group and redo everything, because that's the entire basis of our high morality Western civilization, is the ability to do things right. That's that. It's going to be really funny when the pedophilic anime culture that popped up around 2012 shrivels and dies, along with 4chan, as Israel becomes isolated on the world stage. I always wondered why anime got so bad. And, I traced it up to financial markets and, foreign demands, really. Japan is mending their ancient blood feud with China. Just like how China makes insane aftermarket car parts for money with the incredibly bright lights and the incredibly loud horns, they're only serving a demand from the most annoying and childish Western nations, usually, and sometimes in Indonesia and Malaysia. Usually in Indonesia, unfortunately. India, Indonesia, and Western nations. And those people that they're serving never grew up from their noise toys in the crib, their baby toys. It's noticeable that German engineering, Honda, and Yamaha rice rockets and Italian supercars are the most annoying, but Japan is choosing a wiser route than these shot-out Italians, sorry guys, and these perverted Germans. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, scheiße, ja! Oh, yeah, blah, blah. Thank you, South Park, for taking a little bit of time to point that out. Soon, the shrinking coalition that was a global force for smug insanity will dip back to be nothing, and it'll die. But countries that are already ruined will carry those scars for a long time, and they won't stop being ruined unless we stop this nonsense that was probably hoisted on them after, the particular forces that really won, not America, but the forces that really won, used them as a humiliation grounds and gigantic open-air torture chamber. Germany especially. But Japan, too. In 1978, we got complete control of their economy, and we ran it into the ground. We forced them first to induce liquidity and counterfeit their own money and just go hog wild with inflation and create all these black suit companies and also, underground gang networks to do horrifying things to their own people and anybody that got in their way. And that we are the progenitor of that. If you actually study on a case-to-case basis, a lot of those Yakuza, they were actually very honorable people, and they would never have done the stuff that people in Japan were doing in the 90s and stuff like that, and the especially in like 2018 region when little girl anime started becoming really popular, and now it's moved over to China. But I would love to see it if that just got like slashed and then died back after, and then just completely went extinct if Israel like completely ruins themselves and goes belly up on the world stage. That'd be great. That'd be really fun to see. I'd be like, I was completely and utterly right. In fact, I should have gone harder on it. But people still have free will, so never get it twisted. People should be able to choose to turn and try to do the best and try to make some form of penance, and that's that, Unless you're like an active pedophile, in that case you should die in a ditch. You should get active pedophile, mass grave. And at the same time, you got to be very careful because you can't just say somebody's a pedophile. You need to actually prove that they're a pedophile. Otherwise, you'll have huge mass graves occupied by just innocent people that aren't very defendable. Gotta look out for that. Because that will poison the well. You got to make sure you're doing it the right way. Where the communists did it, where they made everybody face the wall, not a good way of even accomplishing their own goals at the end of the day. It's funny when you observe the discussions online from the people who obsess over rice rockets. They genuinely think that they're cute. They think that they're cute. They know exactly how annoying they are, and they love the attention. But I've also seen what happens when they're cracked down on firsthand. They throw enormous belly-aching tantrums. All of a sudden, they care about freedom and decency. And, oh, sir, you have put up a terrible thing, and you must be ashamed of yourself, oh, sir. It's very funny. It's hilarious, in fact, what these behavior cycles do to individuals' psyches. However, it's also dire. It's very dire, and in many cases, the police are literally not allowed to apply basic moral standards because of quasi-legal chicanery. Now, we know the danger of street racing to both the drivers and innocent bystanders. We know how much of a general annoyance that assaults people in their yards and even pierces into their homes, assaults people's animals on their sensitive ears, distracting those people, increasing their chance of injury while they're doing stuff, and making it harder to work. Children moaning in oral pain, and adults increasing the chance, and adults having involuntary muscle spasms from the vibrations. But the biggest debt is accrued spiritually by the children who are groomed to think that these adrenaline junkie attention-seeking behaviors are cool. There are severely mentally ill adults that believe that the sins of the father are shot so deep that there is no chance of repentance, and that's where you get the Thelema do what thou wilt stuff, as well as a lot of what you see Israel doing, apocalyptic narrative for justification of all sins. But that's predeterminist hacks expressing a low IQ conceptualization of human nature. You should not let a blessed child fall into these sinful circles. Nobody's born bad. Should not do that. And you know what? Sitting in silence is a great strength. Auguring your innermost thoughts to utilize the good and audit the bad. Some people demand maximalist worldly stimulus. They will stunt their own spiritual growth and end up so dry and miserable at the end, wailing and gnashing of teeth. Hold your head up. Open your eyes. Set a good example for the next generation. It's that simple. Stop blaming things on your genes and leaning everything into circumstance. Start eating better. Pray with your whole heart. Be humble. And whatever you think is wrong with you will once again just be you. All right, y'all. Have a happy Holy Thursday. I will not see you tomorrow. I might see you Sunday. Cheers.